Hi, everybody. So the world has changed dramatically for businesses and government organizations over the last 10 years. The rise of the internet, social media, smartphones means there's more information at the fingertips of more people than ever before. It's really never been easier for your customers, citizens, employees and prospective employees, suppliers and vendors to find information about you online, reach out and engage, evaluate that engagement in their minds, and then tell their friends and family members which organizations are great to work with and which government organizations may not be so great to work with. But the thing is, now, your customers, employees, prospective employees, your suppliers, stakeholders, and vendors aren't just comparing government agency to government agency. They're comparing government agencies to everywhere else, every company, every business, every website where they go to get stuff done in their lives. Applications, websites, your publications, contact centers, your smartphone apps, and your communication. And they talk about their experiences to their friends. They post about it on social media. They may write letters to their congressman. They might even call up the IG when their expectations don't match their experiences. So in many ways, and in many instances, there's been a shift in our world, and that shift is the experience economy, or what we know to be the experience economy. Now, you may have heard the term before, experience economy, and maybe you've thought about it just in terms of it being a private sector phenomenon. But government isn't immune to the ripple impact of the experience economy. In fact, the experience economy is really all around us in government. You have the President's Management Agenda goal on customer experience, along with an interlocking goal on shared services centers. You also have OMB Circular A11 Section 280. OMB Circular A11 Section 280 is guidance issued by OMB about a year and a half ago to high-impact service provider agencies that instructs them to incorporate the practices and principles of customer experience as a business discipline into their respective cultures. You also have the Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey that gets a lot of attention. You also have legislation. 4 big pieces of legislation passed in just the past 2 years alone into law, designed to make things better for customers, citizens, and your website users, those being the Taxpayer First Act. Cases for constituents, both very recent pieces of legislation that have been signed into law. The IDEA Act, and I said connected government, right? So these are all experience-related initiatives, directives, laws, rules that have come to pass, which signifies to us that the experience economy is indeed all around us in government. And organizations that don't manage experiences for their employees, their customers, and their prospective employees, they suffer. How so, you may ask? Well, we know that 2/3 of the workforce is disengaged. We also know that approximately 2 million people every month quit their jobs due to negative experiences in the workplace. Meanwhile, 80% of business leaders believe that they're delivering great customer experiences to their customers, but only 8% of customers actually agree with that. 8%. That is a huge gap. That gap is what we know to be the experience gap, and that gap is what leads to customer complaints that come out of the blue. Failed website launches, failed product launches, failed campaign launches, and unwanted employee attrition. So in many ways, experience management and actually closing that experience gap is our new imperative. Even though we are in a government setting, there is a business side to running every government agency that mirrors the for-profit world. You have to be able to listen, predict, and respond to an ever-changing set of expectations from your customers, citizens, employees, your prospective employees, your suppliers, your partners, your vendors, and other stakeholders. And those expectations are indeed changing faster than ever before. We've talked a lot about data today, so we have a lot of data at our fingertips. But despite having all this data at our fingertips, even though there's more data than ever before to manage those ever-changing expectations, we still manage to get blindsided by experience gaps. So clearly the answer isn't more data, but maybe the answer is different data. You see, there are 2 types of data: operational data and experience data. Oh, sorry. Most agencies do pretty well with operational data. You know, some of the things that we've been talking about today, like the Data Act of 2014, lots of other rules and regulations on data, performance reporting, and data quality mean we pretty much have to be really good with operational data in government. Operational data is stuff like the numbers of new applications that come into your agency, program adoption percentages, employee attrition or retention. When I was leading CX for a federal government agency, some of our operational data that rose to the surface had to do with our contact center volumes, the numbers of new phone calls that came in, emails and chats, application processing time, what we call processing time, our customers call wait time, and claims information, reimbursements, dollar values, numbers, those processing times. Most organizations in government do pretty well with OData. But to know whether or not you're really steering toward mission success, you need X data as well. X data is fundamentally different than O data, and it's essential in understanding what you need to do for your customers and your employees or your prospective employees to navigate the business side of your agency and steer toward mission success. X data is really about the human factor data. It's the thoughts, the beliefs, the emotions, the outcomes that your customers perceive that they have acquired as a result of working with your agency. X data comes from things like the customer effort score, surveys, there's some familiarity here with surveys, I'm sure, supplier feedback, roundtables where your employees may provide feedback to you, supplier feedback, website feedback, trust data, and pretty much every government agency has at least one advisory committee that's feeding experience data into your organization in some way, shape, or form. O data tells you what's happening, and X data tells you why it's happening, and you need both to steer the business side of your agency. Let's think about this for just a moment with a case study from the military world. Take a little mental trip with me for just a moment, if you will, and let's talk about the reasons why you need both. So in the military world, there's really no shortage of operational data. Military leaders, for example, know how many jobs are open. They know which ones are critical to fill. They know how quickly or how slowly they're being filled. They know how much money is being spent on things like deployment, training, human capital, and they know, for example, how long it takes to move a military family from one duty station to the next when the service member's orders change. So you might think that with all of that operational data, there would be plenty of data to understand what the employee's life is like, what the service member's life is like, and what their experience is being an employee of the United States government. But imagine this: a senior pilot with 15 years of experience and training under his belt, training that the United States military has likely spent well into the millions of dollars, I fact-checked this, well into the millions of dollars on, has 15 years of experience, and he's currently serving another 6-month tour of duty in a faraway country, again. And he just got off the phone with his wife and kids. And the wife says, "You know, hon, I love you, but we really are burned out. The kids and I are just burned out on this life. We need something normal where you're home with us on birthdays and weekends and holidays. But for 15 years, you've pretty much been gone. We're burned out. We've got to do something else. I'm sorry." So the service member has a choice to make. He can either stay in and risk losing his family, or he can leave the military. So we have all kinds of operational data, but with that type of attrition risk, operational data could never cue you in on that type of risk. Today, many government organizations are O data rich and X data poor. And when you don't have X data, or your sources of X data aren't streamlined, we were talking about this in an earlier session as well, when your sources of X data aren't streamlined, then you have experience gaps. And this is why so many organizations get blindsided by those experience gaps we were talking about, those customer complaints, the failed website launches, the failed product launches, the employee attrition. So to close the experience gaps, we need to go beyond mastering O data. We need a constant pulse on customer sentiment. We need to understand things like, when our users log onto our website, are they finding what they need? Is it understandable? And are they finding what they need in an expeditious manner? And for employees, which employees are most at risk of leaving? Which employees would like to climb the ranks to SES? What's it going to take to get them to stay? We need to understand and have data that serves as a compass that helps us listen, understand, and act. One more case study for you, another one that happens to be from the military world that I chose because I thought that it represented a great convergence of customer and employee experience. Come with me again on another mental trip, this time to Barksdale Air Force Base, Louisiana. We have military vets or families in the house, so we understand what a military installation is, right? So for Barksdale Air Force Base, Louisiana, 14,000 people every day go to this city within a city to go to work, go to school, shop, dine, bank, pursue their hobbies, maybe go see the doctor or go bowling. So airmen aren't just employees. They and their families are actually the customers to an extensive suite of on-base services. So a lot of investment goes into the on-base services, and they're designed to help support that service member and his or her family while they are serving in the United States military. A lot of investment goes into those amenities because families could otherwise fracture when they don't find the support that they need during frequent deployments, continuous duty station changes, and when Air Force families are faced with those kinds of changes, that's when they look to those on-base services for support. And when they find them, and find them in a way that resonates with them, their experience is one way. But when they don't find them, then there is an attrition risk. They're at risk of leaving. So you can see why asking the service members and their families about their perceptions of on-base living was critical. And so Barksdale Air Force Base wanted to find out what are the base-specific factors that are influencing the service member's decision to stay in the military or leave. So they needed a good way to measure, but their traditional ways of reaching out to airmen and their families just really weren't working, paper surveys and email surveys. So they worked with Qualtrics to design shorter surveys, and what they did was they armed themselves with this shorter survey on iPhones and smartphones and iPads, and the leadership team converged into the Barksdale Air Force Base community, everywhere where the airmen and their families were going to work or going to school, grabbing a bite to eat or shopping, and they asked them to fill out the survey on the spot, 4 or 5 questions on the spot, to get a sense of what are these on-base factors that are influencing your decision to stay or go. So as you might imagine, response rates, of course, went through the roof. And they got a great sense of the airmen and their families' experiences of living on base. But in doing this, they found some deeper things. And this was really where a breakthrough moment came. Through the course of doing this exercise, they found some things that they needed to consider in the overall picture of the realities of military life. Mental health issues, suicide risk, domestic abuse. Feels like a little bit like a breakthrough moment, right? We sought out to find some information about experiences, and we found that and then some. So we like breakthrough moments, but historically, achieving those breakthrough moments has been difficult for a couple of reasons, mainly technology-based. Silos and security. Incorporating X data into the systems of an intelligent enterprise finds difficulty when there are silos, it's impossible to standardize, and when there are security implications. So first, let's talk about silos. X data is siloed across teams and tools, which means it's inaccessible to any department or division that didn't ask for the feedback in the first place. The result is that different teams, we were talking about this earlier, different teams are asking sometimes the same questions or different questions to maybe the same or a different set of customers or employees, and so the result is disfragmented results. It leads to customers' employees being inundated with irrelevant questions or to employees being asked questions without any kind of mechanism for following up. It's not integrated, it's siloed across teams and tools and not integrated with systems of record. In order to be meaningful and actionable, X data needs to be centralized and enterprise-wide. Next, let's talk about security. When teams do collect X data, oftentimes it isn't secure. When X data is collected across multiple teams with multiple tools, the result is you have a hard time managing what can sometimes be sensitive information on your customers. So think about this for just a moment. Question for you. Do you currently know how many surveys and survey platforms are being used across your organization? How many surveys or survey platforms are being used right now across your organization? Well, if you don't know, then you're not alone, because according to our research at Qualtrics, 1 in 3 IT leaders doesn't know how many surveys and survey platforms are being used across their organization, which creates significant security and compliance risk. Plus, when employees who are using their personal accounts to collect data, to collect customer feedback and data, leave the agency, that leaves with them. That data leaves with them. So in conclusion, X-Data helps you listen, understand, and act on the expectations of all of your stakeholders. And X and O data systems together and used like a compass will help you to close those experience gaps and help you to achieve your mission success. Thank you.